I don't think a single developer or player of a game would question you if you said that enemies are one of the trickiest things to get right when developing a game. Most Metroidvanias such as Hollow Knight place enemies in the same spots throughout the map, providing a challenge but completely erasing the surprise which discovering new areas bring. The question is, how can we challenge this convention in an interesting and rewarding way, allowing players to still feel a sense of accomplishment but not boring them by making a world feel set in place and immovable, regardless of your own personal journey throughout the game. Pre-warning time, I will be discussing Hollow Knight in a negative light. I don't hate the game, in fact it's my favourite Metroidvania I think I might have ever played, but if any Hollow Knight fan does stumble upon this video, I don't want you getting triggered, so yeah, relax. My name is Tom and welcome to Indie Design Focus, where I take indie game mechanics and explore them and discuss how they can be applied in other games. I recently started playing Sundered, a Metroidvania with some random level generation on my Switch, because where else would it be? I love my Switch and this is a channel dedicated to Nindie games, so yeah, it was on the Switch. But what really drew me to it was its horde-based enemy mechanic, for rather than having enemies dotted throughout the terrain of the game, these encounters are focused into rapid mass attacks in which you have to fend off large volumes of enemies before you're left to explore again for a few minutes, with no one in sight, free from eldritch creatures trying to rip out your throat and feed it back to you. I mean, yeah, these guys are pretty brutal. What I found really interesting about this was that you are completely alone except for these high intensity moments, alone to move through the map with nothing as much as one enemy bothering you. It's completely empty, except for you. Sundered allows you to explore its map with complete independence before launching these stress points at you with a loud gong and the sounds of hordes running into you from the distance. This is a mechanic I find fascinating. You even have a choice in how you deal with the horde thrown at you. Running away is not only possible, but sometimes it's the right answer and crucial for your survival. At the point you can barely see the playable character in a pack of creatures, running may be the difference between life and death and minutes of backtracking. And so Sundered evolves into a parkour-like survival chase, where one wrong move will drag you back into the pack and probably kill you. Alternatively, you can fight, unsuccessfully at first, and try to push through that way. Trust me though, you will die a lot before you really get to grips with how these mechanics work, and have something other than a wet noodle in your hand to slap these enemies with. I really think Sundered benefits from this mob-based AI. I think it could be well utilised in other games. Hollow Knight is a superb example of a Metroidvania, and I think it does a fantastic job of creating a lived-in world. The NPCs in the game are phenomenal and I loved my time with it. But one area I was disappointed with at times was its use of enemies. And having played Sundered, this is really emphasised. The infected crossroads was a great example of how a world can be changed according to the player. You are the person that makes the crossroads become infected by your progress in the game, no spoilers. But I think an incorporation of Sundered mechanic would improve the experience and then the oppressive nature of its world. Hollow Knight is based in a world fighting against you. At times you feel like you're getting destroyed and oppressed by outwards forces, but I didn't always feel this. Sundered, on the opposite end of the spectrum, is able to generate an atmosphere that makes the player feel like they are constantly fighting against something, even if they're not always in combat, because in moments of quiet you look around and you don't feel comfortable in the world that you are in, and that is because you know at any second a loud gong's going to go off and you're going to get absolutely decimated. I don't want to praise Sundered too much because I don't think it actually executes this mechanic as well as it could. So what exactly is wrong with it? I'm not a perfectionist, but there are some issues with this mechanic. For one, I don't think it would work well in this case if it wasn't used in a Metroidvania. I don't think it would work as well if it wasn't for the fact that Sundered is very reliant on its rogue elements. It is simply too punishing in nature, Enemies can shoot lasers through walls, attack from all directions, and the stamina system is really exploited in a way that limits your movements as you're trying to move away from them. On top of slapping all this into some really narrow environments, and you've got a pretty deadly suit that I would definitely not be trying. I also think it could benefit from having pre-made levels in order to stop the cheapness of some sequences, but also to emphasise the parkouring element a lot more. Sundered lies on the dangerous line between difficulty and plain old frustrating, but that doesn't make its systems redundant. It suits the game to a T, so how would I go about turning this into a more well-rounded and transferable mechanic? Well, we've identified the issues, so how about we look at the useful parts of this idea? The opportunity of choice it gives the player, the feeling of oppression it gives the player, and the way in which it allows a world to be shaped. The ability to either run or fight is great. Player choice is always appreciated. Shout out to every developer out there who lets us choose what to do. I think this could work better by perhaps pushing a greater definition between the two. Not so that you have to be shoehorned down one path, but instead so a player can make a decision based on more factors than just how low their health is and how good they are. Perhaps manipulating what type of enemies appear could lead to this. A mix of slow and fast enemies, for example, could lead to a player deciding they can risk killing the faster ones, which will then allow them to run away and not face a stronger set of slower enemies. Alternatively, an assortment of enemy attacks could also achieve this. Having both long and short range attacks can make either running or fighting a more difficult choice. But the key thing is that there's an option, even if those options are of different difficulties. The fact is the player still has the choice, and the blurring of lines isn't evident. The parkour-like element that a horde mechanic can introduce is something I haven't actually seen explored before, but I really think it should be. We love precise 2D platformers, and Sundered tries to do this, but ultimately the random nature of levels prevent it from being a finely tuned mechanic, and lead to some really frustrating sequences with dead ends and pile-ups. Design sequences might diminish choice, but lead to more satisfying gameplay. Going back to Hollow Knight, the platforming segments of the White Palace are a great example of fun parkour, although in this case there are no enemies to contend with. A balance can definitely be achieved between maintaining enemy danger, but ensuring it's fun to run away if you want to. Wall jumps, dashing and double jumps are all mechanics that are crucial parts of Metroidvanias, and they're designed around movement, but sometimes they aren't used to let the player have fun. Instead, most games, and Metroidvanias are very guilty of this, treat them as a tool and unlock for progression and use them little after. Games are supposed to be fun, so remembering to let the players have fun is crucial. At the end of the day, enemies are a near staple of every genre within gaming, so why are we so unwilling to try something different with them, especially in the 2D space? The standard method of enemy placement isn't something which shouldn't be challenged, and so I applaud Sundered for trying something new, even if it isn't perfect. I can still congratulate them for what they've tried to do. It allows us to reflect and think about how we can explore a new mechanic for our enemies, one which can certainly be more fun than charging towards predetermined enemy number 400, who you know where it will be, how you can deal with it, and what's coming after. Games are meant to be fun, so it is important that developers are always trying to push players into fun and interesting experiences, and a great way to do that is to shock them. I hope you enjoyed this pilot episode of Indie Design Focus, and don't worry Hollow Knight fans, I don't hate the game mechanics. In fact, I really love Hollow Knight. It's a superb game, as I said. I just think it could be improved, so stay away if you're just gonna get mad at me. If you have suggestions for any mechanics you want me to explore, be sure to tell me either in the comments on this video, or at me on Twitter at @TheXVProject, I'll link it in the description. Indie Design Focus may be my series, but I want to build it upon other people's feedback, so be sure to let me know if there's anything you want me to cover, or any way you think this content can be improved. This is supposed to be an insight into indie gaming, and that's what I want it to be. Thank you very much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe, leave a like if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Peace out, Nindie fans.